They fired me at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because I was watching the payroll deadline countdown when Jessica Parker, 26 years old, MBA from Northwestern, daddy's little consultant, walked into my server room with a laptop and said she was taking over. Taking over what exactly? I asked, not looking up from my monitors where 8,500 employee records were running through validation checks. The payroll system, she said, like she was announcing the weather. We're streamlining operations, going digital. I turned around in my chair and stared at her. Name's Harold Peterson, but everyone calls me Hal. I'm 48 years old, been running database systems for Midwest Manufacturing Corp here in Cincinnati for 9 years. This kid was telling me she was going digital, standing in a room full of servers that had been digital since before she learned to tie her shoes. You mean the Oracle 11G Enterprise database that processes multi-building, multi-shift, union-compliant payroll for 80,500 manufacturing workers? I said slowly. That digital system? Well, yes, but I've built something better, Jessica chirped, patting her laptop. Excel-based, super agile. That's when I knew we were all doomed. Let me back up and paint the picture. I run the payroll backend for this place. We make components for defense contractors, medical devices, automotive parts. Real manufacturing, not some app company. When I call in sick, the welders in Building C don't get their overtime calculations. When welders don't get their overtime, they start parking pickup trucks sideways across the loading docks. My sanctuary was the server room in the basement. Rows of humming machines that kept the financial heart of this company beating. The cooling fans used to purr like content cats, but lately they wheezed like my neighbor's old dog Rex after chasing squirrels. Still, the beast, that's what I called our main system, never missed a beat. The beast was hungry every 2 weeks. It needed data from 47 different time tracking systems, half of which were older than Jessica's college degree. It calculated shift differentials for 3 buildings worth of union workers, commission structures for our sales team, and hazard pay for the guys working with chemicals in Building F. 1 decimal point out of place, and the whole thing choked. When it choked, people couldn't pay rent. I knew that intimately. My wife Linda teaches 3rd grade, God bless her patience, and we've got 2 kids in college. Emma's a junior at Ohio State studying engineering, and Jake's a sophomore at Cincinnati majoring in business. Between tuition, books, and dorm fees, we're looking at $47,000 this year alone. On a teacher's salary and my database administrator pay, every paycheck matters. The office outside my server room was corporate purgatory. Beige cubicles, motivational posters about teamwork, people eating $15 salads while talking about synergy. They looked at me like I was furniture, useful, furniture that came with the building, and occasionally made noise. "Morning, Hal," Jessica from HR would say as she walked by. Different Jessica, thankfully. "Payroll looking solid for Friday? Unless lightning strikes or the internet dies," I'd grunt. "We'll make it." "You're such a rock, Hal." "Yeah, a rock. Something you step on, something you ignore until you trip over it and curse its existence." She didn't know that 3 days earlier a power surge had tried to fry our main database. I'd spent 11 hours manually rebuilding corrupted index files while everyone else was home watching Netflix and eating takeout. I liked the stability, though. At 48, I had a mortgage on a decent ranch house that needed new gutters, a 2014 Ford pickup that ran on stubbornness and prayer, and a retirement account that Linda constantly worried wasn't growing fast enough. I didn't need their praise or recognition. I just needed steady paychecks and the quiet satisfaction of keeping 8,500 families financially stable. Then came the storm clouds. Rumors started floating around like bad cafeteria food. The company had been acquired by some corporate giant. New management was coming in with fresh ideas and cost-cutting initiatives. Anyone over 45 with more than 5 years' experience started updating their LinkedIn profiles. The new vice president of operations was Brian Webb, 38 years old, with one of those LinkedIn photos where he's staring into the distance like he's solving world hunger, but really he's probably thinking about his golf handicap. His bio was loaded with buzzwords: disruptor, change agent, operational excellence. I hate change agents. They're like people who rearrange your kitchen and then act surprised when you can't find the coffee. That Tuesday afternoon, I was running pre-payroll validation, scanning every single employee record for errors, checking overtime calculations, verifying union contract compliance, when the meeting invite popped up. Operational Efficiency Review, Brian's conference room. Attendees, Harold P., Brian W., Jessica P. My left eye started twitching, the same twitch I get when I see a truck heading toward a bridge with a weight limit sign it's clearly going to ignore. I saved my work, backed up my scripts to my encrypted personal drive, paranoia earned through years of corporate restructuring, and walked through the maze of cubicles toward the executive floor. The carpet got thicker and the air got thinner as you climbed the corporate ladder. Brian's office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the plant floor where real work happened. Behind his mahogany desk sat a guy who looked like a Ken doll that someone had left too close to a heater. Shiny, artificial, and slightly melted around the edges. That's when I saw her. Jessica Parker, 26, sitting on the leather couch with an iPad, looking like she'd just graduated from a stock photo about young professionals disrupting traditional industries. This was about to get very interesting. "Hal, sit down." Brian gestured to a chair that was noticeably lower than his own. Classic power move straight out of Management 101. I sat anyway. No point fighting furniture when there were bigger battles ahead. "What can I do for you, Brian?" I asked, checking my watch. I've got the pre-check running, so I have about 30 minutes before I need to manually verify the union overtime calculations for Thursday's shift changes. Brian chuckled, a sound like gravel tumbling in a cement mixer. "Always in the weeds, huh, Hal? That attention to detail is what we've always appreciated about you." "It's not attention to detail, it's necessity," I said flatly. "The system is old, Brian. It needs someone who understands its quirks. Like an old car that only starts if you pump the gas pedal twice and turn the key just right. Right. The legacy system." Brian leaned back and made a steeple with his fingers, probably something he learned in an executive leadership seminar. "That's actually exactly what we wanted to discuss. Jessica here is our new operational efficiency consultant." The kid on the couch looked up and gave a little wave. "Hey, Jessica just completed her MBA from Northwestern," Brian continued. "Top of her class. She's been doing a deep dive into our workflows, identifying redundancies and optimization opportunities." "Redundancies," I repeated, letting the word hang in the air like a bad smell. "You mean the stuff that keeps this place running?" "Well, that's just it," Jessica piped up, bouncing off the couch and walking over with the enthusiasm of a golden retriever. "I've been analyzing your processes, and there's so much manual intervention. It's very 2015. It's 2024, and it works," I said, feeling my jaw tighten. "It's paid 8,500 people accurately every 2 weeks for 9 years running. That's over 450,000 individual paychecks without a single compliance violation." "But it's so high friction," Jessica said, waving her hand dismissively. "All those scripts, all that database maintenance. I've built a model that streamlines the entire data ingestion process. Super clean, super agile." I stared at her. Really stared. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable for everyone except me. "A model," I said slowly. "You built a payroll processing model." "Exactly. In Excel. It's got conditional formatting, pivot tables, the works. I can run the whole salary matrix right from my laptop." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Excel. You want to run multi-building, multi-shift, union-compliant, hazard pay differential payroll for 8,500 manufacturing workers in a spreadsheet. "With macros," Jessica added. "Like that solved everything. It's totally scalable." I looked at Brian. His face had that practiced, neutral expression that executives wear when they're about to destroy your life and want to look reasonable doing it. "Is this a joke?" I asked. "Are we being filmed? Is this some kind of corporate training video about what not to do?" Brian's expression hardened. "We're implementing lean methodology across all departments, Hal. We need to modernize our approach. The legacy system maintenance, frankly, it's not in the budget for next quarter." There it was, the real reason. Not innovation, not efficiency. Money. They wanted to save my salary and benefits by replacing me with a kid who'd work for half the pay and didn't know enough to realize she was walking into a minefield. "You're firing me," I stated. "We're helping you explore new opportunities," Brian corrected with the smoothness of someone who'd practiced that line in the mirror. "Today is your last day. HR has prepared a separation package." I felt something cold wash over me. Not panic, not anger, something darker. The calm that comes when you realize you're watching someone set their own house on fire and ask you to leave before calling the fire department. The payroll cycle runs this Friday, I said, my voice getting dangerously quiet. Today is Tuesday. Right, and that gives Jessica the perfect opportunity to implement the new system, Brian said. Clean transition, minimal disruption. We'll be totally fine, Jessica interrupted, already pulling out her phone to check something. I've stress-tested my macros on sample data. The processing time is actually faster than your current setup. I stood up slowly. My knees popped like small firecrackers. At 48, I was starting to feel every one of those years, especially the ones I'd spent hunched over keyboards in basement server rooms. Sample data, I repeated. Yeah, I used the first 100 employee records from last month's export. Worked perfectly. 100 records. She'd tested a system designed to handle 8,500 employees using 100 records. That was like test driving a school bus by riding a bicycle around the block. Okay, I said. The word came out flat, emotionless. Okay, Brian, please leave your badge and company laptop with security on your way out, Brian said, already turning back to his computer screen. Dismissal complete. Move along. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Jessica was already hunched over her laptop, probably opening Excel and feeling very important about her pivot tables. One thing, I said. What now? Brian sighed without looking up. I looked directly at Jessica. When the beast gets hungry on Friday morning, don't feed it corrupted data. It has a very sensitive stomach. What beast? Jessica asked, wrinkling her nose like I'd just spoken in ancient Greek. You'll figure it out, I said, and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who just watched someone volunteer to perform surgery with a butter knife. Good luck on payday, Jessica. I walked out of that office knowing exactly what was going to happen. These people thought they were innovating. What they were actually doing was pulling the pins out of a hand grenade and juggling the pieces. The walk back to my desk felt different now. The fluorescent lights seemed brighter, the cubicle conversations louder. Everything had that surreal quality you get when you realize your world just shifted on its axis and nobody else has noticed yet. My desk was an island of controlled chaos in a sea of corporate sterility. 3 monitors, a mechanical keyboard that sounded like machine gun fire when I really got going, and a stack of sticky notes that contained the secret codes for keeping this company's financial soul intact. Error 4404 on Gateway 7 equals reboot backup server manually. Check Jessica from accounting's overtime. She rounds up. Building F hazard pay requires EPA cert verification. I grabbed an empty cardboard box from the supply closet and started packing the pieces of my professional life. Photo of Linda and the kids from our fishing trip to Lake Erie last summer. Emma holding up a decent-sized bass, Jake pretending to be disgusted by the worms. My Lucky Phillips head screwdriver set, the one that had saved my bacon more times than I could count. Emergency aspirin, because server crashes and headaches went together like peanut butter and jelly. My coffee mug with the faded text, "I'm here because you broke something." Jessica Parker materialized behind me like a corporate ghost, practically vibrating with nervous energy. "So," she said, popping what sounded like grape bubble gum, "if you could just email me any relevant passwords for the handover." I stopped packing mid-motion, turned slowly, looked at this kid who thought VLOOKUP functions were the height of technological sophistication. "Relevant passwords," I repeated. "Yeah, admin access, database keys, server credentials, the usual IT stuff." "It's all documented," I lied smoothly. There was no documentation. The last guy had left behind a Word document from 2015 titled "Good Luck" with a picture of the Titanic sinking. I'd learned everything through trial, error, and 3 a.m. phone calls to Oracle support. Cool, Jessica nodded, clearly already thinking about her victory lap. "I'm planning to migrate everything tonight. My Excel model is going to revolutionize this place. It's got dashboard visualization and everything. Color-coded status indicators. She was planning to manage 8,500 paychecks with what amounted to a digital crayon set. "Jessica," I said, leaning in close enough to smell her overpriced vanilla latte perfume, "do you know what a race condition is? Is that like a diversity initiative?" she asked, looking genuinely confused. "No, Jessica. It's when 2 processes try to access the same data simultaneously. The system panics and usually zeroes out the entire transaction table." "Well, Excel doesn't have that problem," she scoffed. "It's just cells and formulas." "Exactly," I whispered, hitting the power button on my workstation. The fan spun down with a dying wheeze. The humming stopped. The green lights faded to black. That computer had been running continuously for 387 days. Shutting it down felt like pulling the plug on a life support machine. "Well, I said, hoisting my cardboard box of memories, "it's all yours now." "Thanks, Hal. And hey, no hard feelings, right? It's just business, nothing personal." "Nothing personal," I echoed. But inside I was thinking about Emma's tuition bill sitting on my kitchen counter. $23,500 due in 3 weeks. Jake's dorm fees another $8,200. Yeah, nothing personal at all. Security was waiting by the elevator. Paul Hendricks, a guy who'd shared countless coffee breaks and complained about management's latest bright ideas with me for the past 5 years. He looked like someone had asked him to kick a puppy. "Sorry, Hal," Paul muttered, taking my elbow with the gentleness of a funeral director. "Orders from upstairs." "It's okay, Paul," I said as we walked toward the exit. "Do me a favor, though. Cash your paycheck early on Friday, like the minute the bank opens." Paul frowned, pressing the elevator button. "Why?" "What's wrong with Friday? Just trust me on this one. Before noon, Paul. Promise me. You're starting to worry me, Hal." "Good. Worry is smart. Cash the check early." The elevator doors opened with a cheerful ding that felt completely inappropriate for a funeral procession. We rode down in silence, Paul shifting his weight from foot to foot like he was standing on hot coals. The lobby was all glass and chrome, designed to impress visitors and intimidate employees. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the parking lot where my pickup truck waited, patient as an old dog. Beyond that, the 3 main manufacturing buildings where real work happened. Building C with the welding operations, Building D with final assembly, Building F with the chemical processing that required hazard pay calculations I'd spent 3 years perfecting. "Hal," Paul said as we reached the security desk, "you sure everything's okay? You seem, I don't know, different." I signed the exit paperwork and handed over my badge, the piece of plastic that had been my key to this kingdom for 9 years. It made a small plastic click as it hit Paul's clipboard, such a tiny sound for such a big change. "Everything's fine, Paul. Better than fine, actually. It's about to get very educational around here." "What do you mean?" "Let's just say Jessica Parker is about to get a master class in the difference between theory and practice." I pushed through the glass doors into the humid Cincinnati afternoon. The air was thick and heavy, tasting of hot asphalt, car exhaust, and summer storms building on the horizon. My pickup started on the second try, the engine settling into its familiar rumble. Before pulling out of the parking lot, I sat for a moment looking back at the building. 3 stories of glass and steel housing people who thought paychecks materialized through some kind of corporate magic. They'd just fired the magician and replaced him with someone who thought magic was real. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "Hey Hal, trying to load the master payroll file, but Excel keeps crashing. Is there a size limit or something? Jessica." I stared at the screen. She'd probably just tried to open 9 years of historical payroll data in a laptop with 8 GB of RAM. That was like trying to pour Lake Erie into a coffee cup. I didn't reply. Instead, I put the truck in gear and drove toward home, where Linda would be grading papers and wondering why I was early. Behind me, the building grew smaller in my rearview mirror, but the satisfaction was growing larger by the mile. Friday was going to be very, very interesting. Linda was in the kitchen grading 3rd grade math tests when I walked through the door at 4:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. She looked up, pencil poised over a paper covered in wobbly addition problems. "You're early," she said, immediately suspicious. After 22 years of marriage, she could read me like one of her students' homework assignments, messy but ultimately predictable. "Interesting day at the office," I said, setting my cardboard box on the kitchen counter next to the stack of unpaid bills. The college tuition invoices sat on top like accusatory letters from the future. "Define interesting," Linda said, putting down her pencil. "They fired me. Replaced me with a 26-year-old MBA who thinks she can run payroll in Excel." Linda's face went through about 6 different emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, anger, worry, then something that looked almost like relief. "Oh, honey, are we going to be okay?" "The tuition payments." "We're going to be more than okay," I said, cracking open a beer from the fridge. "Trust me on this one. Friday's going to be very educational for everyone involved." That night I sat on the back deck, listening to the sounds of our neighborhood settling in for the evening. Somewhere down the street, Jerry was mowing his lawn. The Henderson's dog was barking at something only he could see. Normal sounds from normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that 8,500 families were about to get a crash course in why you don't replace expertise with enthusiasm. Wednesday passed quietly. Too quietly. My phone should have been buzzing with status updates, system alerts, the usual pre-payroll anxiety. Instead, nothing. I spent the day in my garage workshop rebuilding a carburetor for my neighbor's old Chevy. My hands needed something useful to do while I waited for the inevitable. Thursday morning, the tremors started. Not the big earthquake yet. That was reserved for Friday. But definitely some rumbling underground. Text messages started trickling in from guys at the plant. Hal, why does my pay stub preview say I worked 4,247 hours this week? My overtime calculation is showing negative $12,000. Did I break the space-time continuum? I looked at the screenshots they sent. Classic column mapping error. Jessica had imported the data wrong, mapping employee ID numbers to hours worked fields. The system thought employee number 4247 had worked 4,247 hours in a single week. When the tax calculation software tried to process that, it had what amounted to a digital nervous breakdown. Then came the company-wide email, forwarded to me by at least 6 different people. From Brian Webb, VP Operations. Subject, temporary payroll display issues. Team, you may notice some minor display anomalies in the employee portal today. We are implementing next-generation payroll architecture to better serve our workforce. These are temporary formatting inconsistencies only and do not reflect actual deposit amounts. We appreciate your patience as we revolutionize our operational systems. Revolutionize. He was calling data corruption a revolution. Thursday evening brought 3 missed calls from Jessica, 2 from Brian, and 1 very long voicemail from someone who identified himself as Richard Sterling, the CEO. I'd never spoken to Sterling in 9 years. I listened to the voicemail twice. Mr. Peterson, this is Richard Sterling. We seem to have encountered some challenges with the payroll transition. I'd appreciate a call back at your earliest convenience to discuss potential consulting opportunities. Consulting opportunities. That was corporate speak for, please God help us, we have no idea what we've done. I didn't call back. I opened another beer and watched the evening news. The weather guy was predicting storms for Friday. Perfect. Friday morning arrived like Judgment Day with a hangover. I woke up at 7 a.m. to my phone vibrating so hard it was doing a slow-motion walk across the nightstand. Not just text messages anymore. Social media notifications, missed calls, voicemails. The manufacturing workers were organizing on Facebook. Anyone else's checking account empty today? WTF Midwest Manufacturing. Mortgage payment bounced. My bank says no deposit received. Union meeting emergency called for 10 a.m. This is breach of contract territory. By 9 a.m. it had made the local news. Channel 12 was running a ticker. Manufacturing giant faces payroll crisis. 8,500 workers affected. Crisis. Finally, someone was using the right word. My phone rang. Richard Sterling again. This time I answered. Mr. Peterson, thank God, we have a situation. No kidding, I said, sipping my coffee and watching the news coverage. Looks like your revolution hit some speed bumps. We need to resolve this immediately. The union has called a wildcat strike. Production is completely stopped. We're missing a critical defense contract deadline tomorrow. Sounds expensive, I observed. What would it take to get you back here today? Name your price. I let the silence stretch until it hurt. $20,000, wired to my account before I touch a keyboard. 20? That's highway robbery. That's emergency consulting, Mr. Sterling. Supply and demand. Your demand is pretty high right about now. Silence. Then, fine, what else? New contract. 2.5 times my previous salary. 2 years guaranteed. I report directly to you, not Brian. Done. And I want a public apology. Posted on the company website. Signed by Brian and Jessica, admitting this disaster was caused by management error. Richard, we can't possibly... Brian's voice in the background. Shut up, Brian, Sterling snapped. Fine, Hal, we'll do it. 2 hours later, I was back in my server room. The beast was still there, humming quietly, waiting for its keeper to return home. It took me 14 hours to undo the damage Jessica had inflicted in 72 hours. I rebuilt corrupted transaction tables, restored from my encrypted backups, manually reconciled 8,500 employee records. I reran every overtime calculation, every shift differential, every union contract clause. At 4 a.m. Saturday, I transmitted the corrected payroll file to the Federal Reserve. By Monday morning, 8,500 families had their money. That Monday, I walked into my new corner office with windows overlooking the plant floor I'd helped keep running for a decade. My nameplate read, Harold Peterson, Director of Information Technology. Jessica was gone, pursuing other opportunities. Brian got transferred to a smaller facility in Toledo. That evening, Linda and I took the kids out to celebrate at the nicest steakhouse in Cincinnati. Emma raised her beer. She was 21 now, engineering student, sharp as a tack. To Dad, she said, the guy who keeps the lights on. And the paycheck's coming, Jake added with a grin. I looked around the table at my family, my real wealth, and thought about the lesson I'd learned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's proving that experience, dedication, and knowing how things actually work will always beat fancy degrees and empty buzzwords. The beast was purring again, all systems green, 8,500 families sleeping soundly. It was good to be home.